So we're going to go ahead and replace the power steering pump and steering gearbox right here on this 1997 Chevrolet C1500 pickup truck. So as you can see here, I have already got the fan shroud off, the upper and the lower fan shroud. It gives you a lot more room to really work down here and maneuver to get that gearbox. So I have already pulled off serpentine belt, and I already pulled off this gear on the power steering pump. And basically, I'm going to show you guys the way this works. But what it is this here is the pulley itself, and I have this universal type pulley puller. It really makes it a lot easier to have a pulley puller. But what it does is it has these two jaws that flip on the outside and hold that pulley on, and the center shaft will go through and actually force off the shaft from the power steering pump. Now, one of the things to be careful of when you do this is you really need to make sure you mark, the position of the pulley itself. So let me get some light on there. But you can see there's that grease line where you can see that where the pulley was is where it's all shiny because grease couldn't get to it, whereas where the pulley wasn't, there is grease. So I'm going to use that as a marker later on so that when I replace the power steering pump, I'll know exactly how far it goes on. Now, whenever I got this fan shroud off, I did end up loosening some bolts on my fan itself. It just made it a lot easier to get that thing out. I ended up maneuvering it out through the top, just kind of slid it down over, so I just have those sitting right over there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a drain pan underneath here, and I'm going to crack these lines and drain out all the fluid. So I'll go ahead. If you're like me and you like having a bunch of tools for everything, you can actually have two different sized pitman arm pullers. So right here I have a smaller one. Well, that's obviously not going to work. It's probably for some of these smaller joints and stuff like that. So you have to make sure you get the large one. But what I'm doing is this here is a pitman arm. When I use this puller to pull it off, it really makes it a lot easier when you have the puller. You can't really do it without this puller. So I already got the nut that was on here. I took that off, and then you can see it's just right here. Here is the nut. It just slips on there like that. Now, if you haven't done this before, it can be a little bit stuck, and you can probably hammer it loose. It just takes some working, but once you get that off, you pull it out, set it aside, don't lose it, so you'll have to use it again. Now, unfortunately for me, I actually replaced this pitman arm not long ago, so it shouldn't be too stuck on there. Yeah, basically just get a wrench from here, and what you'll do is tighten that up until that pitman arm comes off. Okay, so I just got my pitman arm a little bit loosened up. Let's get this puller out of the way. Now you can see it just should come off that shaft. So I'm going to see if I can lower this thing and then move it off to the side. Well, I'm going to have to actually loosen this up too here to help get it better. It's just, when you're doing mechanics, you try to be as least invasive as possible because you don't want to screw anything else up, and that's actually loose. So I'll actually remove this, at least loosen up a little bit so I can get this fully off of there, and we'll have access to this. Okay, so now I just got the pitman arm off. You can see it right here, and it just sat on there like that. And then I pulled it off. So we're going to put that cotter pin back in it and the nut so we don't lose it. So now we have a little bit freed up. So now at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to crack these lines open. You can see there's the power steering pump line up there. You can see it has that clamp on it. I'm going to take that off. And I'm actually replacing the lines, so I'm just going to take them off and drain it into the pan right here. So get that all drained. Alright, so I didn't have, this is actually probably an 18mm. You can use a crow's foot for it. That makes it a lot easier. Now, I didn't have that, so I just used an adjustable wrench. I don't recommend doing this, but, oh well, sometimes, in mechanics, you gotta improvise. And that's what you do. So I just loosen this one up, and we'll let it drain out. And once you prick that seal, it'll definitely start pouring out. Yeah, sometimes these things can get a little stuck, but we're replacing all this anyway, so I'm not really too concerned. There we go. Now, so much stuff starting to pour out. I'm gonna loosen up the power steering. Yeah, I loosened up that power steering fluid cover right there to help it all drain out. So it's good to replace all this stuff, especially I'm replacing the whole system here, so whenever I put it all back, I'm gonna have fresh fluid in it anyway, so I'm not really too concerned about it. So I'm gonna pop out this other line too. and then we'll get them off, and then it should be good. Next thing I'm going to do is, there are these 3 bolts right here. These are going to slide in there. 1, 2, and then 3. Right here for the power steering pump. Let's go ahead and loosen them up here. That way we can help pull that power steering pump off. Now I think there's still one in the back that we also need to pull off, but I'll take a look at that. But definitely those 3 for sure. Yeah, need to be pulled off. Alright, so now the next thing I'm doing here is I disconnected this other end of that line. I can see there's another bolt right here. It's going to need to be removed. And then there's this clip right here. It's like a wire. I don't know what the heck it's for. But we'll remove that so we can have some more room to work. We'll just get that out of the way. So the next thing I'm going to do, pop out that line and pop out that bolt right there. Right there. And that should be able to remove the power steering pump. I'm also removing this little bolt right here. After I take that out, this is connected to the reservoir itself. But once I get this thing out, you can hopefully see that. But there's a bolt right behind here by the manifold. But once I get this out, I believe the pump itself should come out too. There's also this bolt underneath right here that I had to remove. And then I took that off and it disconnected the bracket and finally made the power steering pump off. So that other bolt that I showed you guys I took off, you don't need to do that. And actually I'm going to put it back on. So, or at least you do need to take it off eventually so you can put it on the new power steering pump. But I'll show you guys what I end up doing. So I got this power steering pump out and you can see that there is this bracket here. Now you can see you guys these slotted holes so that to help hold it in. Now I ended up just taking off the nut completely. It probably could have been done without it. Could have just slid it off. Although this one actually, yeah, they're slotted for sure. But this bracket looks like it does need to come off because if you look at this new one I got, or rebuilt one, you can see it does have the bolt holes for the bracket itself, and it also looks like this assembly right here needs to come off as well with this whatever sensor it is. That will need to be transferred over to the new one. So I'm going to go ahead and pull off these bolts and then clean this all up and then get this bracket set onto this new one. And I'm also going to just take off this line. I just have one of these hose clamps, so I'm just using a 1/4 inch wrench. So it looks like someone has replaced these lines before, but that's not surprising. This truck's 18 years old. So, you know, we'll get this all cleaned up and start transferring everything over. And then we'll clean up inside the engine bay too. Now, you can see all in here the things that we've taken out. And one of the main things that I did was, since I pulled out the power steering pump, there's a lot more room here for us to work, and we can actually have a look at this gearbox itself. So you can see that's a lot easier to access now, but especially with those 2 lines out. Now one of the things that we're going to have to do is, you see there is this cover. Now it kind of slides along a line right there. If the line were there. Now this kind of slides up, and when you move it out of the way, you can actually access a bolt here. Now this bolt, you can see right in there, is actually what's going to be holding it on, and it's basically like a clamp. So if you take that out, then this intermediate shaft right here, it should be free to go. Now the only thing about it that you have to be careful of is that I have an airbag system on here, and you want to make sure that you do not move your steering wheel. So let me show you guys what I did as precaution. I actually just wrapped my seatbelt around it, so you can see this right here. I just wrapped my seatbelt around it, so make sure that thing doesn't move at all. So basically I'm not going to touch it at that point, just to make sure that I don't mess up the alignment and stuff like that. But if I can get the intermediate shaft out of the way, then we can access that gearbox. But in the meantime, I'm going to clean this all up and get those power steering pump. Guys, one of the things about this power steering pump that's kind of goofy is, you see it has this sensor assembly. Well, this is kind of hard to get off because what is it actually, it sits in here and it gets screwed in. Okay, it has these threads right there. Now it's a little bit difficult to get out, so what I ended up doing was, it was sitting here kind of like this, and it kind of, I couldn't access that bolt right there. Basically I just twisted out, of course, so I moved this over to the side, and then I was able to get a large enough wrench on there. I just used this 300mm adjustable wrench, and then I ended up having a hammer to get loose. So one of the neat tricks is that I have learned over the years is that if you have a stuck bolt or something like that, a lot of times you can get it out with a bit of a hammering action. So, like, let me show you guys. Like on these bolts, actually they were sitting on this bracket. When they have, like this one in particular has this kind of bolt in the bottom that gets stuck, and I end up just using a 18mm impact, and the impact works really well because it has a bit of that hammering action that really helps loosen things up. So that's what really works wonderfully. But so this sensor, yeah, now we've got it out, and now you can see it actually will go onto this new one I purchased, where this blue plug is, and that's where it's going to go, and then we'll install all that stuff. Okay, so now I got the power steering pump, of course, got all those components all moved over, so that's all good. But now I'm going to start tacking this gearbox here. So I've got, you can see there, that bolt right there I need to get. It's 11mm, so I'm just loosening that up. And once that is out, she will slide the intermediate shaft out. So I went ahead, and this thing, I just used a screwdriver to pry it out, and it kind of telescopes back in on itself. So I was able to just slide it back, and then now the whole thing is free, and I just have a few bolts down here. I think there's 3 of them that will need to disconnect that we can pull out this old steering box. Alright, so now for the fun part, I'm actually unbolting the steering box. So you can see here's the box itself on the bottom side. Now, underneath the driver's side wheel well, you can see there's a bolt there, right here, one there, and a third one up there. Now they are 21mm. Now for that one up there at the very top, I've got the fender well inside the way, and you can't really bend it back very easily. So I'm just using my trusty old adjustable wrench. It seems to work just fine. I mean, I'm not stripping it out really, so that's the good thing. But the thing about it is, when you're doing this, you're going to want to make sure this backside is supported so that the whole thing doesn't just fall down. That wouldn't be very good, but otherwise, just the 3 bolts and the whole thing's... Alright, now to give you guys an idea, I got the whole thing off now. And you can see those 3 mounting bolts I'm just having to stick out. So that there, up here, is the other end of the intermediate shaft. And as you can see, it does have a flat side up there. So that definitely helps. So unless you move the steering wheel a whole lot, you're not going to have to worry about losing the alignment. The tiny little adjustments don't really matter. Now, one of the things that I made sure to do was that I set it so that basically my wheels are straight and my steering wheel is not turned at all. Make sure you do that, because the reason we say that is because if you look at the new one, it already is aligned with the flat part on top, just like I pulled off my old one, which I have sitting in this pan right now. And basically when you reinstall it, when you have that flat side up, it will make sure everything's aligned just right, and you put your pitman arm back on, and you're not going to be like not able to turn or something weird like that. So the next step here is I cleaned up a little bit under there, and then next thing is really just to bolt the new one back on and connect it all back together. So I'll go ahead and get to that. Alright, so I got those 3 bolts installed. Next thing I'm going to do here is simply realign the simply reinstall this here intermediate joint. Got to telescope back a little bit. So it looks like it's going to take a little bit of work to get it back in there, but now I'll work it on, and then we'll get that nut in.